have appropriate responses. If someone has their foot on your neck, you should be trying to get up. If someone is trying to kill you, you should be trying to save your life. But instead, we lean into the inferiority. We lean into thinking that it is what it is and nothing's going to change. We lean into it's just the world that we live in. We lean into, oh, the government is, it's just crazy. It's okay. We lean into that we can't make change. So now, Jewels and Gems, welcome back to the Vantage Point Pre-Talk, where we cultivate your mind for the jewels of the soul. I'm your lady, Azandi Malinki, and I need your help. I want to know what you want to know. Comment below and let me know what topics you would like to hear, what questions you may have, because I care, and we want to make this show the best for you. So please, don't be a stranger. Leave the comment below. Now, if you've been tuned in the last couple weeks, you'll notice that we've been talking about spirit, personality. We've spoken about broken but not defeated, meaning you can repair those portions of yourself that you had to leave behind, those portions of yourself that were broken through trauma experiences and the likes. We talked about that cry for help and how melanated people have been made to have to deal with suffering, how we've been made to have to sit through suffering of ourselves and those like us, right? And that cry for help that we haven't been able to ask for. We spoke about so much, and we've had Reverend Dr. AJ Varma on with us the last 3 weeks, which was amazing, just to enlighten us and share so much insight and wisdom, especially in the scriptures. So we're going to continue along this path, and this is kind of connected to everything that we went through until we overcome and transcend, which is the theme this season. So this Friday, our guest will be speaking about overcoming intruding thoughts. So I'm going to set the table and kind of get into thoughts. It's very important for us to know about our bodies. That's first and foremost. A little side note, right? I won't take too long, but some time ago, I started something called Etheric Energies, in which the intention was to connect our body processes, what's happening on a biological, anatomical level with the mind, the brain, because I'm very big on understanding thought, understanding the psyche, understanding the nature of people, personalities, and how our behavior connects with all of these other things that's happening in the body. So I had some people asking me what happened to etheric energies? And so I'm here to say that it didn't go anywhere. This is still very important to us, and so we're going to incorporate it. And a lot of these pre-talks will be going more into the body, more into the mind, more into the psyche, more into the brain and how it functions and how it works, etc. So today we want to start off a little bit with that in mind, understanding thought. So thought can be looked at various different ways. Thought can be looked at from biology, from theology, from philosophy, from psychology. There's all these different fields of study that seek to understand or to explain, describe thought, right? And so I want us to look at the brain for just a second. In the brain, we have all these different regions, and we have the cerebral cortex, or the prefrontal cortex, that deals with higher thinking, right? It deals with executive thinking, it deals with reasoning, it deals with problem solving. And you have the limbic system. Then you have the limbic system, which includes the amygdala, the thalamus, hypothalamus, hippocampus. And this deals with learning, it deals with emotion, it deals with hormonal balance, it deals with motivation, right? And then you have the basal ganglia, a lot of people don't mention, but it deals with habit formation. So you have all these different portions and regions of the brain. But the reason for mentioning this particularly it's because we are dealing with an interruption in being able to function from different portions of our brains. So you have neurons that are constantly firing, they're constantly seeking to connect and sending these connections through the axon, all the way down through the axon, through a synapse, but we're dealing with a disruption in the connection of these neurons and neural pathways. So what's the point of me saying this? The reason for this is that thoughts that should be processed in the prefrontal cortex, the thoughts that should be processed when we're able to problem solve and able to think on a higher level, are not being processed that way. Some time ago, we've had a guest on, a very intelligent, lovely elder, and her name is Dr. Elaine Ferguson. And she spoke to us also about how stress and how racism, right, because we're in a constant state of stress, has us functioning only from the reptilian brain, only from the part of our brain that's dealing with fight, flight, freeze, that's dealing with basic survival skills, right? So because we're only functioning from one portion, which is functioning from the midbrain, we're never able to get our thoughts processed properly. And stress, I want us to understand that stress is the number one killer, is the number one cause of any disease. And because melanated people are in a constant state of stress due to racism, due to the environment, due to trying to navigate the home environment, trying to navigate the workspace, trying to navigate the social environments that's infused with racism, then guess what? We're never functioning fully in full capacity. And so understanding thought, we have to also understand how thought is disrupted. Thought is disrupted through these constant stressful environments. When you're in a stressful state, the thalamus won't send for that information to be processed in the prefrontal cortex. You'll be stuck in a different region of the brain and dealing with the amygdala and dealing with the portions of the brain that is just trying to regulate these hormones and this stress. So that's the reason why understanding the brain, understanding how it functions is important, because once we know how it functions, we can understand the dysfunction, we can understand the interruption. Because so many people trying to figure out, why can't I remember? Why can't I, think at a high level? Why do I forget? Why can't I function in a fast pace? Your brain is your CPU, it's your central processing unit. So your brain should be able to process at a high speed, but our brain has been slowed down because the connections that should take place between these different neurons, these neurological pathways, are being disrupted. And that's when we talk about something called neuroplasticity, because neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt and repair itself. And that's relevant to thought, because thought is a part of that process. Thinking about new or positive or constructive thoughts, right, to replace bad or negative thoughts, allows for the brain to create new neural pathways and to strengthen neural pathways. So you're strengthening and you're creating new neural pathways at the same time, with constantly repeating, constantly intentionally trying to repair the brain. So I say this to say that we cannot talk about like anxiety, depression, all the things we spoke about over the last couple of weeks. We can't speak about that without understanding the inner workings of it. Because these disorders, depression plays a huge role in destroying those neural pathways, or destroying those signals of those neural pathways. So each of these things that we're talking about have a connection to exactly what is happening inside of you. We talk a lot about what's happening outside of you, but what is happening inside of you, right? Because we also have these neurotransmitters like dopamine and like serotonin. And dopamine is our reward system. It's like our reward system. So when you're kind of attracted to that man or attracted to that woman, or attracted, you want that cake, right? Whatever it is, your dopamine levels are being raised in anticipation and anticipation of having that connection, that interaction, or that experience. So a lot of times we don't know that we're kind of looking for that dopamine rush because we like the feeling that we're getting from being attracted or seeing someone or seeing something, or it creates when you see that cake, it creates your mouth begins to salivate. You're getting like all of these different feelings of pleasure, and that's your dopamine. But if you don't understand the neurotransmitters, if you don't understand serotonin, which is dealing with mood, emotion, then we won't understand anything that is happening. Let's see, we have these hormones like oxytocin and cortisol, and oxytocin is like your bonding hormone, right? It elevates when you have these intimate experiences, when orgasm takes place or when erection takes place, you have an increase in oxytocin. So we're creating this bond because it's a bonding or a pairing hormone. It allows you to feel connected to someone. But what could be used as a connection in purpose to a man or woman is now being used for connection to a corrupt or to a debased or to a lustful situation, right? Because oxytocin is also connected to lust when it's used in that way or when it's directed in that way. So we have cortisol, which is our stress hormone. This is relevant because, as we said earlier, we're always in a state of stress. We're constantly stressing about bills, about our children and the decisions that they're making, about, all the things we stress about. Y'all know, right? So all these stressful situations raises our cortisol level. And when it raises our cortisol level, it goes back to what portion of the brain we're functioning in and how we're not really able to make proper decisions. But it also causes anxiety, depression, all of these diseases, all of these social disorders that we've been speaking about. So we have to get our hormones checked. I heard someone say the other week how she had to kind of just cut off the world for a while, and she went to the doctor, she got her hormones checked, and her cortisol level was way elevated. And that applies to a lot of us melanated people. She's not the only person going through that. So understanding thoughts and why we're thinking and behaving and acting a certain way, we have to understand our body so we can understand how our body is being impacted by our experience as melanated people, so we can make the correct changes. We can make those corrections in our life. Now, I want us to think about how some of the fields of study look at thought. In philosophy, they talk about a lot of what we just said, how thought is essential to reasoning. It deduces truths. It helps solve problems. It's included in ethical decision making. It reflects on our existence. Like, thoughts are essential to reflecting on our existence as humans. It shapes our perception, right? Which we know. But we have to realize that when we're looking at philosophy and all these things, they're also being interpreted by Plato and Socrates and all of these Greek philosophers. So understanding thought from a melanated perspective is very important. Then we have like theology, we have scripture, which I'm going to give you guys some verses. We're not going to go into it today for the sake of time, but these are some verses that they would say connects with thought, right? Being in the image and likeness of the Most High, Genesis 1:27, because if you're made in His image and after His likeness, then you're perceiving from the thoughts or from having a divine connection with God. It talks about being the lamp of the Lord in Proverbs 20:27. Genesis 2:27 says, I breathe into man the breath of life. They give Isaiah 1:18. And they talk about discerning divine truth, because to discern truth, thought is involved in that process. And that's 2 Timothy 3:16, Philippians 4:8, James 1:5. And then, of course, what we all know is how human thought is interrupted by sin in Genesis 3. So how sin, how the evils of the world interrupted the natural thought processes. We don't even got to get into that, but y'all know what it is. And aligning human thought with God's will. aligning your thought with the will of God, or with the will, we say, of the Most High, making sure that you're not thinking based off of influence, man's influence, but you're thinking in alignment with the Most High Heavenly Ones. In Isaiah 5:20, it speaks about making good evil and evil good. It says, woe unto them that call good evil and evil good, that puts darkness for light and light for darkness, etc. That's one of my favorites. And lastly, because we got to get up out of here, I want you to think about how culture, language, and societal norms influence thoughts, right? Because language is a primary medium by which culture shapes thoughts. If you think about language and us speaking English, English is very monotone. But not only that, but it's interpreted from a European perspective, where now we're only limited to what the European thinks or knows or has deduced to be true, when in actuality, thinking further past the language that we're speaking in widens our perception. It gives us a different vantage point on life, because if, let's just say, we know lion to be lion, we're knowing what he named as lion based off what he knows a lion to be, opposed to maybe if we went over to Africa, to a different country, and let's say, I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in South Africa, maybe Zimbabwe or a different country, and they call lion Simba, right? That's where they got it from in the Lion King movie. So they have a different interpretation of lions based off of the environment, based off being in more direct contact with lions. How does lions relate to the culture? How does the characteristics of a lion relate to the culture? So they're looking at it so many different ways, and opposed to the one limited way that you're getting just from speaking the English language. So not only is the baby to all races, the infant, the toddler, right? My teacher speaks about this. He's teaching us and expecting everything to apply to his one perception of the world when he came so far down the line. How can we have, that's just like having my 6-year-old daughter teach us all about life when she hasn't experienced it. So he came so far later in creation, and we're listening to his interpretation of the world, of science, of language, of philosophy, of thoughts, of the brain, of the anatomy. Like, we're listening to a baby teach us. So we also have to think about how thoughts develop from family, from community, from society. How your mom or your guardian, your dad, whoever raised you, what their beliefs were, what their morals were, and how they grew you, how they raised you, is also going to depict a lot of your thought patterns. And then we have to think about society, because people think within the narratives of their cultural context. So you have what society tells us is myths, is folklore, is fairy tales, and the core values that it instills, the beliefs, the traditions that it instills in us. And so we go through this almost like it's a confliction. You know how we say conflicting nature, how a person has a conflicting nature between the higher self and sin. It's that same type of conflict that takes place in trying to discern illusion from reality. Because the narrative was sold to you, the illusion was sold to you, and because you believe that illusion, or you want to believe that illusion, it shapes your thought process, it shapes your perception, but it's totally contrary or opposite to your experience. So because you were told what relationships are supposed to be, because you were told what success is supposed to be, because you were told where you're supposed to be in life, because you were told all of these narratives, but it's opposite from the Black experience. What you told me is opposite from what I'm allowed to do, or what you told me is opposite from what I'm manifesting. So you might have people that say, you know what, I did everything right. I went to school, I got A's and B's, but I'm not getting accepted into the nursing program. I'm not getting accepted into medical school. You see people that do everything right. I went to school, but I can't find a man, I can't find a wife. You have all of these things happening because you were sold this illusion of this narrative that's opposite to what melanated people experience. just because of the color of your skin. You told me that we're all the same and that we all bleed the same, but I see people that look like me dying every day. I see cop killings every single day. So the reality as a melanated person is not matching the illusion, but you want to believe the illusion, and this perpetuates this conflicting thought process, which everybody is just like, I don't understand. My thoughts are everywhere. I got to get my mind right. Why do you have to get your mind right? Because your mind is trying to accept what it sees and process what it wants. It's like cognitive dissonance. It's like if I smoke cigarettes, which I don't, if I smoke cigarettes and I want the cigarette, but what you're telling me or what it says on the packet is that it causes cancer. It's opposite. That reality is opposite of what I want. So, we're dealing with a lot, right? We're dealing with cognitive dissonance. We're dealing with apathy, right? Where melanated people have become so apathetic. We become so apathetic to what's happening, where it's almost like what we spoke about with the brain. If you're overworking and overprocessing in one area of the brain, overworking, it's not supposed to be working that hard. It's not supposed to be processing only in that region. And then it creates emotional numbness. That's what apathy is. It's like emotional numbness. So if I keep tapping on your hand, after a while, you won't feel it. It creates a numbness, a numb sensation. But we're emotionally numb to what's happening to us. And we know that because we don't have appropriate responses. If someone has their foot on your neck, you should be trying to get up. If someone is trying to kill you, you should be trying to save your life. But instead, we lean into the inferiority. We lean into thinking that it is what it is and nothing's going to change. We lean into it's just the world that we live in. We lean into, the government is, it's just crazy. It's okay. We lean into that we can't make change, that we can't stand up and fight for our lives and ourselves. And I don't mean physically fight, but mentally get the mental capacity to stand up and to do for self and to separate ourselves and to go into our own place and to raise our own animals and grow our own foods and to do our own thing. So because we're not having the appropriate reaction to racism, because we're not having the appropriate reaction to just basic survival, that means we're dealing a lot with apathy. We're dealing with apathy, straight up. And of course, we have these cross-cultural influences. And these cross-cultural influences, if not anything else, definitely interrupts the thought process. Because if your culture is crossing with mine, it's inserting information, inserting thoughts that is opposite to what I should be adhering to, what I should be believing, what I know to be true. The Chinese understand it because they're trying to get their kids off the internet, because their children being on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all these different things are having exposure to other cultures or non-cultures, what we have here. They're having exposure to this crazy, to this chaos, and they're very strict about education, how they're raising their children, because they want to make sure that they never experience what Black people are experiencing. So the Chinese understand it. The Asian people who are now getting surgeries. I'm trying to remember the name of the surgery. I gotta look it. I'll put it down below. But they're getting surgeries done just to remove what we call chinky eyes, right? Where the eyes are slanted. Really, it's just a fold of skin. But they're trying to get surgeries to fix that fold of skin and to lift it up or to do whatever to look opposite of being Asian. Just so that they can be accepted by this society. That's cross-society influences. So us living in the land amongst Europeans, amongst all these other cultures and races that don't like Black people, call it what you want, what type of cross-cultural influences are we having? What type of cultural diffusion is happening? That's something we got to consider. So, I don't want to make this too long. I want us to get ready for Friday because we really going to get into it on Friday. But on Friday, we're talking about how to overcome intrusive thoughts. When thoughts pop up in our mind and we don't know where they came from, we don't know how to get rid of them. We're trying to put our thoughts in the right places. We have inappropriate reactions, wanting to curse people out, tell people off, whatever it is. What is happening? 4:30 p.m. How to overcome intrusive thoughts. It's only me hanging. Come with me, join me. I'll see you there.